One, ignition.
This is the story of one of the most bizarre heists in history.
Got it.
It's the tale of how this man tried to impress this woman, cheated on his wife,
You did what?
roped in accomplices,
Sounds good. I'm in. Then I sealed my fate.
and stole millions of dollars of moon rocks from here.
I mean, who does that?
Before long, he has this guy in Belgium
I thought it was a hoax.
and all these FBI and NASA agents pretending to be foreign buyers,
To say the one phrase I was able to figure out, which is "U spreekt Nederlands, sehr goed."
all to save the rocks.
Hold on a minute. I think I know who stole your safe.
This is one story that has to be seen to be believed.
They've done it.
Yeah. This Hollywood stuff, man.
So this apartment number 5 is actually where Thad and I lived from when we were married up until basically he was put in jail.
He said it was so simple. Just pulled up in there, wheeled the safe out.
You all right?
Push it.
Well, I tell you what, you'd really have to be confident that nobody was going to see you as you did that. That's not an easy task.
Push it.
I'm trying to push it.
I swept my shirt and I put my hand on my gun and I said, "Hey, I'm Wade Krieger. I'm a federal agent with NASA. Hey, I need you to put your hands on the car right here."
The unlikely tale of Thad Roberts, wannabe astronaut and budding criminal, begins here in his hometown, Salt Lake City.
So we were high school sweethearts. And then we got married about a year after we graduated from high school. You get married and you just find a way to make things work. So, I worked full time and I would just take him to school and drop him off in the mornings, and he would stay at school all day long and then just ride his bike home.
The then 23-year-old go-getter Thad Roberts was studying geology, physics, and geophysics. In his spare time, he ran the university's Astronomical Society.
I did come up to the observatory, which is actually back behind the building over there. And I would come up on Wednesday nights and we would do the stargazing group.
And it was here among the stargazers that Thad first met the man who he would later recruit as an accomplice in crime.
They were looking at Andromeda at the time, and I got to see Andromeda for the first time. Oh, very exciting. There was about 30 people up there, and Thad being the leader. At that time, I just felt his energy. He was a very, very positive person, and of course you could tell he had a direction. He knew exactly where he was going.
And that was NASA. Thad Roberts was believed to be the first person from the University of Utah to be selected for Johnson Space Center's prestigious cooperative education program.
Oh yeah, that was way exciting. How often do you get to go work for NASA? And to be an astronaut, that is definitely something to strive for. Every kid grows up wanting to be an astronaut or something like that. And so he was really excited, and I was also really excited for him.
Everyone coming into the co-op program is passionate about NASA. Dad, I would say, was even more so than the average co-op. He was bound and determined to go to the moon to be an astronaut.
According to his fellow co-ops, the ambitious young man who would later steal NASA's moon rocks seems similar to many other aspiring astronauts.
There are a lot of ambitious co-ops, but he was definitely one of the people that was boisterous and charismatic.
It was here at Building 11 that he and his fellow co-ops would lunch together every day.
He was definitely full of life. You could tell that, and he drew people in. He was seen as someone that had that kind of spark.
But after a while, you start putting a picture together of, okay, this individual's a little bit on the eccentric side.
Eccentric in just an eccentric way, in a good way?
I would say borderline fascinating, disturbing way.
Roberts was assigned to Building 31 North and was given the delicate task of preparing minute Earth rock samples for NASA scientists to experiment with. But Building 31 North holds far more precious stones.
We're going to go into the pristine sample vault.
NASA program manager Andrea Mosey takes co-ops on privileged tours around the vaults.
Lundy's opening the door.
She remembers Thad Roberts as an enthusiastic and frequent visitor.
I actually took a picture of Thad at the vault door doing like this, so it looks like he knew the combination of what's going in. But this is a very secure area, two-party system, and so no one person could get into this vault without the assistance of somebody else.
NASA's high-security vaults contain moon rocks collected from every lunar mission. 840 pounds were brought back, and 3/4 are kept here, in nitrogen-filled cabinets, uncontaminated by the air. These are the rarest rocks on Earth.
Got it. Yep.
The samples that you're looking at are very important to us. They are a national treasure. There's no monetary value that we could actually put on these samples because they're actually priceless. And that's why we take the care that we do to protect them for scientific research and educational purposes.
When we return this rock, or some of the others like it, to Houston, we'd like to share a piece of this rock with so many of the countries throughout the world. We hope that this will be a symbol of what our feelings are, what the feelings of the Apollo program are, and a symbol of mankind that we can live in peace and harmony in the future.
NASA says the moon rocks have no market value, but some samples have been offered for sale on the black market for prices up to $5 million. For Thad Roberts, it was becoming clear that this was an opportunity he couldn't afford to miss. And so it was around this time that NASA co-op Thad Roberts became obsessed with the lunar vault, even taking his wife Katie to visit.
We got to actually put our hands into this little glass thing and actually get to touch the moon rocks. And we were looking at him, and he says, "Wouldn't that be awesome if we could just take one of those and sell it?" Well, you can talk about doing James Bond things, but you don't physically do it. And so I had no idea what he had planned, that he was actually planning and thinking through to steal moon rocks.
For aspiring moon rock thief Thad Roberts, NASA's vaults were just too secure.
This vault is incredibly secure. This is secure as any Federal Reserve Bank or probably Fort Knox. It would be very difficult to break into this vault, virtually impossible.
But while spending a semester in a lab on the floor below the vaults, Thad Roberts discovered an easier cache of moon rocks to steal. Down the corridor, an unsuspecting scientist kept lunar samples for research.
Well, I have lunar samples from every Apollo mission, from Apollo 11 through Apollo 17. And they're kept in a safe, a 660-pound 5-drawer safe with a combination lock that's on them. And I, as a principal investigator, is responsible for the safety of the samples. And I'm charged with this. For me to be able to have the privilege to work on these precious samples, I must keep them safe. They're kept in a safe. I, and only I, have the combination to the safe. And if you just back away, I'll open the safe. We have 53 samples from the moon. Samples from each of the Apollo missions, from Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. There's 101 grams of samples that were in my collection.
Dr. Gibson had spent 30 years studying his moon rocks, compiling notes for a book.
We're looking at Apollo 17's basalt 70215. This sample was collected by astronaut Jack Schmitt.
Man, that is hard. Just don't stub your toe.
It's a wonderful rock, and it's beautiful.
To aspiring moon rock thief Thad Roberts, Dr. Gibson's moon rocks were not just beautiful, they were a treasure trove. It was time to pay the doctor a visit.
In 2001, Thad Roberts came in to my office and sought me out and said, "Would you mind showing my wife, whom I never met before, whose name was Katie, could you mind showing Katie a lunar sample?"
And I think we went into his office,
I asked Thad and KD to stay by the door while I went and opened my safe where the samples were stored.
Thad Roberts saw that Dr. Gibson used the number on the back of a card to get the code for the lock.
I opened the safe and I showed Katie a rock from the moon. She was thrilled. And then, as I do to a lot of guests, I pulled out a small sample of a meteorite I myself had recovered in 1968. And so I gave a small piece of it to Katie.
Everett was a really nice guy, and I really appreciated him doing that for us. He just wanted to give us something else to be excited about. So that was fun.
Little did I know that visit was one that Thad got the idea that somewhere on this site of the Johnson Space Center there might be a safe somewhere, that there would be lunar samples in that safe, and he could plot to try to steal them.
Thad Roberts, who would carry out the $1 million moon rock heist, was getting plenty of practice back home in Salt Lake City. As a volunteer at the University of Utah's Museum of Natural History, he was already improving his own personal rock collection.
There was a trilobite. It was probably about that big that he had stolen. He had told me that the professors at the University of Utah had just liked him so much that they gave him some rocks, when I guess those were ones he just stole.
This would be, 2001? And he said, come on down to the museum if you have some time. And I'm like, sure, I'll meet you down there.
Down in the basement, Roberts raised the idea of making money from moon rocks with fellow student Gordon McWhirter.
He phrased it this way. He said, well, what do you think about moon rocks? I may have one. What do you think would be the possibility of selling a moon rock? And just Googled it. It was immediately apparent that it was illegal to possess moon rocks unless you'd been gifted it. The next time I saw Thad, I mentioned that. He said, well, I have met a Honduran prince, and he has in his possession the rock that was gifted to them by the U.S. government. And I'm trying to help him sell it. And he's willing, to pay for our time. So I avoided mineral collectors in the U.S., and I sent out an email to about 50 mineral collectors, and that's that email everybody talks about.
And Gordon McWhirter gave himself an alias, Orb Robinson.
Hello, my name is Orb Robinson. I have in my possession a multi-carat moon rock. Make it flowery and poetic.
One man who received the email was amateur mineralogist Axel Emmerman of Antwerp, Belgium.
The first impression is always that this has got to be a joke. But something inside me put it aside and said, this is not the usual spam.
And I even told him, I said, the legalities of this are well known.
It's a federal offense, and you go to jail for a long time if you try it.
So, please, if you're interested, let's make this a private affair. Back in my head, I'm helping some poor Honduran prince I've never met. It's Hollywood stuff, man.
As an amateur collector of fluorescent minerals, moon rocks were not on Axel Emmerman's wish list. But as a man with a sense of right and wrong, he had to get involved.
My first reaction was, let's try and lure him out and see if what he is selling is real. And so I wrote him this email saying that I might be interested if you can prove that you have the real thing, the real McCoy.
At that point, I told Thad what I'd done, and he was really excited. He suggested he set up an email account, and I forward those ones that were interested, which I did.
After handing the emails over to Thad, Gordon McWhirter went back to his studies at the University of Utah.
And I didn't talk to him for quite a while.
Thad Roberts returned to the Johnson Space Center with his own space mission to sell moon rocks. Even though he hadn't stolen them yet, they didn't stop him pressing Axel Emmerman to buy. What Axel did next would change both their lives forever.
It was a crime, and a crime that could cost someone dearly. I had to do something. The emails appeared to come from Tampa, so I googled FBI Tampa and I got the website of the FBI division in Tampa.
Axel's email landed in the inbox of Special Agent Lawrence Wolfenden.
We consider ourselves very fortunate that Mr. Emmerman had the sense of morality and what's right to contact us. There's far too many people out there that would have just said, hey, I've got an opportunity to make some money or to have something special that nobody else has, and would have bought it.
Meanwhile, the Belgian rock collector was still being bombarded with emails from the mysterious Orb Robinson.
Are you ready? Let's do this. What are you waiting for? And this kind of made my life a living hell.
The FBI decided it was time they took control of the case.
How can we get somebody from the FBI introduced into this equation and so cut out this middleman?
Bizarre but true. From now on, Special Agent Nick Nance would take over negotiations with Orb Robinson, pretending to be Axel Emmerman's sister-in-law.
Yes, Orb, I will handle this for Axel. He's explained to me a good bit about what we are doing and the need for caution and discretion. Lynn. That's how we introduced me to Orb, basically.
What Nance planned to do was set up a sting operation and arrest Orb Robinson. And the FBI soon found new clues about his whereabouts.
What we had from the original emails, we were able to get those and to be able to look at the internet headers and start to trace back the IP addresses. And we looked through, and yes, there were some IP addresses, and we've got some that are from the Johnson Space Center, which all of a sudden ratcheted the whole thing up.
FBI suspect Orb Robinson was no longer a small-time crook from Tampa. He was a thief operating inside NASA.
Okay, shooters, range going hot, eyes and ears, go!
This is Special Agent Patty Searle of NASA's Independent Investigations Unit.
We're actually the same job series as the FBI, the Secret Service.
Go! It was Searle's team, based at the Kennedy Space Center, who the FBI asked to find the real identity of the illegal moon rock trader, calling himself Orb Robinson.
Okay.
Well, we couldn't just call NASA right off the bat. We could have been a trusted insider. We didn't know.
One thing they did know was that whoever was now emailing from Johnson had originally been emailing from the University of Utah.
We actually found two suspects, two professors from the University of Utah who were working at Johnson Space Center.
But as one of NASA's co-ops, Thad Roberts was operating well beneath the investigators' radar.
I was actually a co-op. It's not that you're not trusted, but you're given limited access to places and documents. So we never believed that anybody on that level would be involved in this kind of sophisticated scheme.
As well as trying to sell moon rocks he hadn't yet stolen.
1, 2.
Thad Roberts began an affair with a 22-year-old NASA intern, Tiffany Fowler.
Wait, let me take a picture of that. Okay.
Which came as quite a shock to the woman who was financially supporting him, his wife.
I was supposed to fly out and I couldn't get a hold of him. And so finally his roommates told me, they said, well, he's not really here. I says, what do you mean he's not here? They said, he's not really living here anymore. He's actually moved in with another girl. Her name is Tiffany. I says, what?
Thad Roberts was later to say that he was so in love with Tiffany Fowler that he promised her the moon.
Contact!
That it was for the love of her that he decided to steal the moon rocks.
Holy smoly! 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston.
At the same time, he tried to preserve his relationship with Katie.
He tried to continue to manipulate me. He tried to keep us together. He was telling me, he says, you know, my relationship with Tiffany, it's not what you think it is, that I'm using her for something else. I can't explain things to you. He says, but I'm going to be with you. I love you and I want to be with you. You don't understand what's going on.
When we interviewed Tiffany later during the investigation, she told me he liked to think of himself as James Bond. He would tell her he's on a secret mission and that, it's an adventure and he can't tell her. So he perceived himself as, I think, as this heist as an adventure.
And Tiffany Fowler wasn't the only woman Thad was enthralling with stories of the exciting, mysterious project.
Shay Sauer was 19 years old. She was a student pursuing an engineering degree while she co-opted with NASA. And I think she was easily brought in to do the crime because she looked up to him, maybe wished she could be as adventurous as him, as popular as him. So I think it was very easy for Thad to convince her to do this.
While Thad continued to intrigue Shay and Tiffany with hints of his secret operation, he escalated his email negotiations to sell moon rocks he still hadn't stolen.
Lynn, let's plan for the weekend of July 20th. Orb.
We weren't thinking about somebody going to go steal them because he talked about, I have in my possession these moon rocks.
Orb. Very excited about next weekend. Speaking of the restaurant, how will I recognize you? Lynn. And so his response back to me was that I will be wearing a black shirt and a dolphin pendant necklace, and between that and the scheduled meeting time of me coming in at 6 p.m., you should be able to recognize me in that way.
So we were preparing for that meet. July 13th was just another ordinary weekend. We didn't know that that was the weekend Thad was actually going to steal the lunar samples from Johnson Space Center.
Thad Roberts was just a few hours away from committing his $1 million moon rock heist and stealing some of the rarest rocks on Earth.
On July 13th, Thad borrowed a Jeep Cherokee from a friend, told him he was moving and he needed something bigger than his own car. Picked up Shay and Tiffany and went to the Johnson Space Center in the evening.
Now, there was no turning back. As Shay Sauer keeps lookout, Thad Roberts and Tiffany Fowler approach Building 31N.
So we had the outdoor building code given to him.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Tiffany and Thad went into the building.
There were no cameras inside Building 31, so that was the only security, was the codes, the outer code and then the code to the cipher lock of Dr. Gibson's lab.
Thad Roberts actually went to Dr. Gibson's lab and tried to figure out the code on the cipher lock.
There was a series of 5 buttons, and the code was 4 of those buttons in some certain sequence.
And so just through trial and error, he figured out the cipher code.
I believe he said it took him about 30 minutes to come up with the sequence of numbers to unlock the lab door.
He had seen Dr. Gibson take a note card from the top of his safe, look at it, and then do the combination. So Thad thought that was the combination.
It wasn't the combination on the back of that index card. It was actually some type of algorithm Dr. Gibson had made up to help him remember what the actual combination was. They had no choice but to try to get the safe on the dolly and haul the whole safe out, which they did with some difficulty.
There you go. Keep pushing it. Push it. Watch the left. Push it. Good, 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 good. Keep pushing. Keep pushing. Pushing. Yep. Okay, wait. There's a door coming. All right. Quickly, quickly. All right. Turn it right. Turn it. Turn it. Push it. There you go. I'm trying to push it.
Well, I tell you what, you'd really have to be confident that nobody was going to see you as you did that. That's not an easy task.
You all right? Yeah.
Confident or stupid, I'm not sure which, because I don't know how you explain it if somebody comes walking by just happenstance, and there you are hauling out a safe. Reckless more than audacious.
I'd describe it as a smash and grab. They couldn't figure out the combination. What else could they do? They loaded it on a dolly and took it out. There wasn't anything complicated. There wasn't anything high tech. It was just take it and run. Tiffany, Shay, and Thad drove to a Motel 6 in Webster, Texas. Offloaded the safe into a room that they had previously rented and began to break into the safe. I think they were a little shocked. They found Apollo lunar samples from every mission that went to the moon.
When we return this rock, or some of the others like it to Houston, we'd like to share a piece of this rock with so many of the countries throughout the world. We hope that this will be a symbol of what our feelings are, what the feelings of the Apollo program are, and a symbol of mankind that we can live in peace and harmony in the future.
You spent millions of dollars going up to space to get these things and bring them back to study them. So this was almost like somebody stealing the Mona Lisa or something like that. And it's more than just a treasure for the country, it's for all of humanity, really. I mean, this is our universe, our world.
Also in the hall were Dr. Gibson's notebooks, 30 years of painstaking moon rock research.
Both Tiffany and Shay mentioned to us the green notebooks that were in the safe. Shay specifically the scientific value of these notebooks, and she wanted to mail them back to NASA. And Thad said, no, we're going to throw them out.
Thad Roberts still denies that Dr. Gibson's Apollo notebooks were in the safe. But Tiffany Fowler took photographs that night, and they show some green notebooks just below the bed. It wasn't until the Monday morning that the theft was discovered. Dr. Gibson was 8,500 miles away at a conference in Sydney, Australia.
I answered the call and I was told that, Everett, you have a problem in your laboratory. Your safe is missing.
Back at the Johnson Space Center, the crew who'd stolen it went back to their daily routines.
Someone had stolen something, but it wasn't told that it was a co-op. We didn't know who it was. So, as that word spread around, I actually had a buddy of mine who actually called over to Thad because they knew he was over there and would know something about it. The response he got back from him was that Thad was like, oh, what do you know? What's going on? I mean, obviously we're asking him what's going on, so we didn't think that he was responsible.
Later that day, Thad Roberts, using his alias Orb Robinson, sent a fax to Lynn, still unaware that he was actually dealing with the FBI. The fax included official documents from Dr. Gibson's safe, enabling him to boast that he possessed the world's largest private Apollo rock collection. For the investigators, the evidence on this fax was the breakthrough.
It certainly took it to an entirely different level.
We were dealing with a theft case now.
They've done it.
So now the agents had clear evidence of a crime, and they had a suspect. Nick Nance, a.k.a. Lynn, pushed ahead with arrangements to meet the man they only knew as Orb Robinson.
Getting a John Doe warrant is a little bit unusual. Trying to say, yeah, we have no idea who it is we're going to arrest, but they have committed a crime. We're certain of it. We just don't know who in the world they are.
We were just using the email address he had, and then we would have to fully identify him or whoever showed up at the night of that meeting.
On the 19th of July, Thad and Tiffany actually worked that day and then departed from Houston, Texas in Tiffany's car to come to Florida with the samples.
Shay Sauer backed out of the Orlando meeting, giving the excuse that she had to attend a scuba diving course.
During their travels, they contacted Gordon McWhorter in Utah, told him they were heading to Florida, and Gordon said he would join them, he wouldn't miss it for the world, and that he would meet them in Orlando.
I flew into Florida on July 20th, early that morning.
As fate would have it, the meeting took place on an important day in the long history of our obsession with the moon.
The 33rd anniversary of, the first moon landing, so that was quite a coincidence.
The Eagle has landed.
We were carrying a fishing tackle box.
And they showed Gordon what they had to sell.
Armstrong and Aldrin see what no human eyes have ever seen before.
I was pretty shocked, but I was also not sober. But I did come out, and I'm like, and do you guys realize how much trouble we are in? Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly how much trouble we're in. Okay, just as long as we know how much trouble we're in right now. Okay, let me see the rocks. I want to see them. Let me see these rocks. And so they opened up the tackle box.
This was 6. Let me see that one. This was 7.
And he's, price tagging them as we go. Thad puts the tackle box beneath the bed, and that's where we hide it. I'm like, you guys hungry? I need something to eat. And it crossed my mind, I could at this point leave this whole situation. Say bye-bye. I don't know, you shoulda, woulda, coulda.
It was while McWhorter was out of the room that Roberts claimed he placed the Luna samples on the bed, and he and Tiffany Fowler were the first people to have sex on the moon. He says that Tiffany spoke French, especially in bed.
Let us go to the new worlds together. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. I won't bore you with details on why you see the antenna all over the ground.
Come back up, and they're in the shower. I don't think they had sex on moon rocks. Unless they made the beds like hotel maids, then I'm sorry. Great story.
Meanwhile, a mile down the road, the agents were getting into position for the meeting with the moon rock thief who called himself Orb Robinson.
Well, this was Italiani's, an Italian restaurant, which is now it's changed names, and even that's gone out of business. But we selected this location just based on its public. It's a public area, so we didn't quite know who was going to show up, how many. We thought we knew, but in fact we didn't. So we wanted someplace very public to reduce the danger factor.
Here it is.
These agents last met together on the afternoon of July 20, 2002. Agents Nick Nance and Lawrence Wolfenden of the FBI. Patty Searle and her colleague Wade Krieger of NASA's Investigations Unit. And Special Agent Lynn Billings, who was to play Axel Emmerman's sister-in-law.
I can remember it was probably about 10 minutes after the meeting time. We were late getting here because of the weather. And Lawrence, because we were short on time, dropped me off at the door. I went in and looked for the individual who described themselves. Of course, we know him as Orb Robinson, and he was not in the restaurant at that point. So I didn't know if we had missed him and he had gotten scared and left, or he was going to be late arriving as well and had gotten caught in the same traffic jam that we did. So I just simply went in, ordered a drink, sat down at the bar, and waited.
Tiffany's driving. So we all go in Tiffany's car and we drop Thad off. And he walks into Italiano's alone. While me and Tiffany go and we park the car.
He was very easy to notice because he had that exact outfit on. And we were all shocked because he wasn't who we suspected.
The first thing he said to me was, it's really nice to finally put a name and a face to somebody that I've been doing all this emailing with.
It's about 6 o'clock, and me and Tiffany will come in later and sit down at a separate table and get the all clear first before joining them. I had no idea the whole restaurant was full of feds.
Thad Roberts was actually meeting Special Agent Lynn Billings, not Axel Emmerman's sister-in-law. And Special Agent Lynn Billings was wearing a wire.
You sound very adventurous. Your girlfriend must be very adventurous too. And so I left the restaurant so that I could go out and make a phone call to the person he believed was my husband.
Kurt, things are going very well.
They'd probably been in there 30 minutes maybe. I'm not certain of the exact amount of time. It seemed like an eternity.
So his two friends are already in the restaurant. They have not sat down at the table yet. I told him I was uncomfortable with that. We're going to all come here, kind of meet. They want to get comfortable with you, and then we're going to go, and everything should be in the hotel room at the Sheraton.
Agent Wolfington came and joined us at the table.
As I came in, they also brought over Gordo and Tiffany.
I'm Lynn. Tiffany. My husband, Kurt.
Thad was the initiator. He was the one communicating between these two agents that were doing a damn fine job pretending they were from Belgium.
I had learned basically one phrase I had worked out, and that was to say, "U spreekt Nederlands zeer goed, aber my wife, she doesn't like me to speak in Flemish."
I was a little worried about his accent, but fortunately he didn't have to say much because Thad was so excited to tell us his story that there wasn't much being said on either one of our parts.
Roberts then proudly told Special Agent Lynn Billings how he'd broken into the Johnson Space Center and stolen Dr. Gibson's safe.
He said it was so simple. Just pulled up in there, wheeled the safe out.
Talked about the fact that they took him to a hotel room afterwards and were cutting into the safe and worried about the noise that was making.
Wow, just beat the heck out of that safe and got into it, huh? Like, I was determined.
Has been very nice, very.
After he had completely told me the story, there was kind of a pause, and I remember him kind of taking a big breath, looking at me and saying, "Wow, I just hope you're not wearing a wire."
And we were done. It's time to go, make the deal.
So at that point, Thad suggested that he ride with Agent Wolfington and myself. So we split up. He actually went back to the hotel with us in our car, and Tiffany and Gordon drove back in a separate vehicle.
Everyone's very tense.
It was bumper to bumper, stuck. Took us a half hour to go a mile.
The license plate number and the make of the Honda that Tiffany and Gordon were driving were relayed to us, so we stayed behind them all the way to the hotel.
Which was now the setting of an FBI sting. With the moon rock stashed in room 905 and the perpetrators pulling into the parking lot, the FBI was about to pounce.
You know, wow, we're right here in the middle of this. We're going to have a chance to recover something that's this valuable.
A haul worth millions of dollars. And with the thieves out in the open, the time to act was now.
So we pulled in right as they made the call to make the arrest.
Tiffany was driving and Gordon was in the passenger seat, so when I pulled in to block their car and they were both getting out of the car.
Reality check. I'm instantly sober and get out of the passenger side car.
You're under arrest. Put your hands up.
Whoa, did we miss a traffic violation? What's going on?
I remember being parked that way somewhere and having to rush up. They were already behind the car by the time I got there.
Turn away from me, face the car, slowly put your hands behind your back.
Oh yeah, I was going to jail. No, I wasn't gonna get out.
At the moment that Fowler and McWhirter were being arrested, Thad Roberts and the two undercover agents were walking towards the hotel entrance.
We were very focused on getting into the hotel, figuring out which hotel room they were in. The operational plan was to have some other agents get onto the elevator with us.
They're walking across the parking lot towards the front of the hotel.
Thad was between Lynn and I.
And I said, Thad. And he kind of looked up like, who's calling my name?
I just recall people from the right coming over and Thad being gone.
Thad Roberts? And he said, yeah. And I swept my shirt and I put my hand on my gun and I said, hey, I'm Wade Krieger. I'm a federal agent with NASA. Hey, I need you to put your hands on the car right here.
And there he is, spread on the trunk of the car.
And then I had him lean forward like this. I had him put his hands behind his back like that. And then I moved in and I cuffed him. That hurts, doesn't it? Put his hands behind his back. My partner was covering me. We had this Dodge Caravan. We called it the Scooby van, and we stuffed him in the van and, went and made contact with the other agents.
Thad Roberts was taken into custody. Neither his family nor his wife would post his bail.
I had to double take. I says, you did what? He says, yeah, I'm in jail because I stole moon rocks from NASA and tried to sell them, and the FBI caught me.
With Thad Roberts behind bars, Dr. Gibson got all his moon rocks back, but they were now contaminated and their scientific value had plummeted. And then there were those missing notebooks.
So did those notebooks contain all of your personal writings about your research over the last 30 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you ever gotten those notebooks back?
No, ma'am.
To your knowledge, have they been recovered?
No, ma'am.
The judge took that very seriously, and she considered that when she sentenced Roberts. And she even said something like, Thad Roberts can write a book after this is all over and done with, but Dr. Gibson can't because his research is gone.
Roberts pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 100 months in prison.
He did get a reduction to 90 months based on the fact that he testified against Gordon McWhirter at his trial.
I didn't see the outside of a jail cell for 4.5 years.
Today, Gordon McWhirter is a proud father of 3 and an author.
It saved my life, really. With drugs, I couldn't stop. I was wanting to die. Prison sobered me up. It saved my life.
Tiffany Fowler and Shay Sauer were each sentenced to 3 years probation.
I think the judge was very sympathetic. She realized that Thad manipulated them and that this was out of character for them. These weren't bad girls. They were smart girls going to college on the right track to a successful future, and Thad ruined that.
The ambitious young man who joined NASA's co-op program as an aspiring astronaut was now described by the judge as a master manipulator. His marriage fell apart, and his wife, Katie, filed for divorce.
I thought we would be married forever, but come to find out differently. I think he stole the moon rocks for money, for vanity, for himself. Also, probably just because he always wanted to play James Bond and just feel like he could go in and sneak around and steal something that nobody else had that he wanted to get his hands on. That's how I feel about it.
We interviewed Thad probably 3 different times after his arrest, and he made it clear to us that he did it for money. He saw himself as doing great things, but didn't want to go through the normal routine that you and I would go through, go to school, get a good job, and then move on to greater things. He wanted it now.
Thad Roberts ultimately spent 6 years in prison. Plenty of time to dream up fantasy stories of how he stole NASA's moon rocks for love and had sex on the moon.
Je t'aime Paris, je t'aime Paris. My heart beats faster at the very thought of you. Je t'aime Paris, je t'aime Paris. Like so many others, I've fallen for